I'm Amy, sex educator, sex and relationship coach, and sex shop owner.
And I'm April, VP of an international high-end pleasure products company and boss queen sex toy mogul. We're best friends who make our own rules about who we are as sexual beings.
With everything from how to be a badass in the bedroom to top tips for bringing your relationship to the next level, we have something just for you.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.
You are listening to a pleasure podcast. For more from our sex podcast collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hey, everybody out there.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all.
Chip over here's got a little sinus thing going on.
Yeah, my
Chill.
nose is super congested, so hopefully you all can't tell. I've been a mouth gaper.
Mouth gaper?
Yeah, where you sleep with your mouth open, you wake up with like drool.
What do you sound like?
Slanging next to you, like... No, I just wake up because I never sleep with my mouth open. So when I do, I wake up and there's like drool.
You wait for a dick in your mouth? A diaka.
Maybe. I wouldn't trust my sleeping open mouth with putting a dick in there.
Only consensual, of course. No one is invited to shove a dick in your mouth.
Yeah, if you see me sleeping on an airplane with my mouth open, do not come up to me.
Someone's like, I heard you're looking
She said she was okay with it.
looking for a diaka.
No, banana's okay, okay?
No, but that's still fucked up. I mean, you consent.
A random banana stabbing in the mouth.
Maybe someone could just pour a little bit of wine in there while it's open, and you'll be like,
Till I choke and yeah.
No, let's not do that.
We're gonna be on an airplane together soon. We're going to Germany.
We are going to Germany and Paris,
and we're gonna record a bunch of podcasts while we're there.
Are we recording a bunch?
I don't know. We might get wind of recording some podcasts.
Here's the fun fact about April and I. We don't have the ability to say no to anything, and there's opportunity everywhere we go, and we're often together when we travel. So when we travel, we end up packing things in our schedules, and we don't sleep a lot. We record a lot of podcasts.
This is why I'm paying the price of my rundown. Like my system's totally run down from 18 days of travel this month.
Yeah,
18 days.
Yeah.
So my dog literally didn't recognize me when I saw him last time. He recognized me, but he was gave me the old fuck you eyeball, like stink eye. I was like, dude, I'm your mom.
Yeah.
And then he peed on my bed. Despite me, because he hasn't done that.
Bitch, you've been gone.
Yeah. I'm like, he really did. It was like this very...
I don't blame him.
It was a manipulation of my mind and his little dog brain.
He's mad. I don't blame him.
He is, and he's in love with your friend's dog over here.
Oh yeah, I'm dog sitting.
Yeah,
I'm the dog sitter. I had Monty here. I can say his name because he's a dog. And I sent Monty, our little old 15-year-old mascot, and now I have another dog.
I didn't tell you this. I walked out of my apartment the other day, and it was 7 a.m. I was taking Legend out to go do his morning duties, and it was right after we got back from Brooklyn, and some guy gets out of his car. He's like, it's not the same as being in Brooklyn, is it? And I look at him. I'm like, oh, damn it. I can't. And he totally,
podcast fan?
Yeah, he was a podcast fan. I was super tired, and I just got back the night before.
Oh.
And he was like, talking to me, and then about whatever, a few things, and then he saw my dog, and he's like, oh, is that Legend?
Oh, he knows.
And then I was really kind of excited but super awkward
because it was 7 a.m. and you were tired.
Because it's the morning, and I'm not a morning person. I didn't have coffee in my hair. When I walk out of my house in the morning, you ask yourself two questions: homeless or hipster? When I walk out of my house,
or a homeless hipster,
because I look hilarious. My hair is just like raw, and then Legend looks the same kind of. He's all. You think he's a homeless dog, or he could be a hipster dog.
Yeah, but your friend recognized you, podcast fan.
Yeah,
love podcast fans.
If he's listening right now, thanks, podcast fan.
Thanks, podcast fan. Sorry if April was a little confused at 7 a.m. She's not her shiniest self at that time, especially after Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That was an exhausting trip.
That was.
Speaking of travel, April and I will be teaching once again on Friday, October 24th here in California in Atascadero, California at Diamond Adult World. We're teaching Orgasm 101. So again, this is Friday, October 24th of 2019. Go to diamondadultworld.com and you can sign up and learn all about Orgasm 101 from April and I and learn from us live in the flesh.
And Atascadero, if you don't know where it is and you are somewhere in Central California, it's actually such a cute little town. It's coastal. I believe it's like super close to the coast.
It's close. It's not right on the coast.
No,
it's
but
inland,
it's such a
inland
cute
right
little
off of
town.
101.
Yeah, and it's easy to drive to if you're in Santa Barbara or Paso Robles. So if you're anywhere near that and you want to check it out, spend a Friday night with your date night or on yourself. You
Come
can
learn.
go out with some friends.
We'll teach you some things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We always have fun.
Come learn. Come play with us. Are you all ready for a sex question? Yep. I like the sex question because I have a personal story to tell about the sex question. I am a 26-year-old female. I've had about 5 men I've had sex with. 3 of those 5 men have performed oral sex on me, and I have never really liked it. It does not make me self-conscious or uncomfortable. Honestly, I'm just kind of bored. I love giving blowjobs, though. That kind of oral is fun for me. I've told girlfriends over the years about this, and they all look at me like I'm crazy and make statements that the guy must have no idea what he's doing. I am currently 3.5 years into a relationship with my now fiance. He is 31. We have a great sex life, and I have tons of orgasms with him, just not from oral. I've tried to be directive and patient, but I just get bored and want to move on after a few minutes to more fun activities. Am I just a weird exception and receiving oral is not my thing? Could I learn to like it? Or are my girlfriends right? He just doesn't know what he's doing.
Ooh, I'll say something brief about this, and then I want to hear your story because I'm excited about it.
Tell me, Chip.
So I think if my advice would be, it might not be for you. That's okay. I would say don't write it off entirely. As Amy's mentioned in podcast past, your body's always changing, and sometimes your desires are switched off for certain things at certain periods of your time of your life, and then they could go totally be turned back on without you even realizing that that's happening. So I would say you don't have to practice it on a regular basis. Don't write it off completely because you may like it 5 years, 5 months, 5 days from now and not even know. Now, as far as knowing what he's doing, I would say I don't know if there is something that you believe he could try that would be different. Maybe you could make some suggestions. It sounds like there's tons of videos. There's instructional videos. I think Nina Hartley actually has a really great one.
Tristan Taormino has one.
Tristan
too.
Taormino has one. Yeah,
that
actually, I've had partners in my past watch those videos and try some of the techniques, and they've been really effective. So there's options, and if you don't know what you like because you've never actually liked oral,
no, they did.
Oh, they did.
This is my question. So 3 out of the 5 men performed oral, and I didn't really like it. So are you saying that 3 of the 5 did oral and you didn't really like it, and that the other 2 just never did oral? Or are you saying you actually liked what the other 2 did? Because if you receive oral from 2 people that you actually liked it, what were they doing? And how do you remember what that is and redirect new partners to that? Or like, what do you? I can't really tell.
And if all of those people or 3 of them performed, and 3 out of the 5 performed it, and you didn't like it from any of them because they're not really saying exactly if the other 2 had performed it. Mm. If the 3 performed it and 3 times she was not into it or interested in it, perhaps. I mean, there's so many different variables here.
Yeah, I mean, if you did actually enjoy it with those other 2 people, and it's unclear if that's what you're saying, then what were they doing, and how do you, or not even just what were they doing? What was the scene like? What was the energy like? Where were you at that point in your life? I think all these things add up and actually contribute to our sexual experience. And then if not, maybe those people didn't go down to you. I'm also curious about what bored means for you. Does bored mean, because a lot of people, including myself, have a receiving barrier. And so when I'm laying there and receiving and I'm not doing anything, which is what oral sex is, someone going down on me, often I will have this thing come up like, I need to be doing something. I need to be, touching their cock or their body or their bits, or now it's only, it's been 5 minutes. Now we should move on to something that involves both of us. And I have to really work against that. And for me, my theory on why that's there is because the first 3 people I had sex with never went down on me. They never offered it. And I didn't ask for it, and I didn't really know much about it. And so once people started to do it, I had like a worthiness barrier around it. There was a block to it, almost like I wasn't worthy of it because I was so unfamiliar with it, and I was only familiar with things that involved their penis. So I'm curious what bored is. Is bored you going through a receiving barrier? Is bored you just not feeling anything? You're kind of numb, and so of course you're bored because you're like, I don't really feel much. What does bored mean to you? And then why I relate to this. So I'm someone who had my receiving barrier. Oral sex for me, it's very similar to this person, but to me actually has often felt ticklish, pokey, brought up like a squeamishness in me, and I've had definitely a number of occasions where it has felt really good. But for the most part, it's something that I was utilizing to get my pussy wet so I could move on to something else. Or I was also using it to like please someone else because they wanted to do it. And there again, there's times when I enjoy. It's not that it was all terrible, but it was very easy for it to be too much stimuli, too much ticklish, pokey, whatever. And I recently, and I've talked about getting my sex drive back, blah blah blah. One of the people I'm seeing right now that I've been seeing for the last, month and a half now. I don't know, since we're in Salt Lake City and I put my number on a receipt and picked up on someone.
Month and a half, wow.
It's been a little while. This person is the very first person who has gone down on me where I have the feeling, oh my God, I want you to do this forever.
Oh.
It's the very first person. I've had Minnie Mouse on my pussy in my lifetime, and I've had some very skilled mouths on my pussy, and there is something about this, and actually going back to the last podcast we did with Jaya, and Jaya has her erotic breakthrough quiz. I took that quiz, and I'm an energetic is like my number one erotic blueprint,
right?
And I think so. Energy has a lot to do with it in terms of me feeling safe, respected, the energetic state, how the other person is arriving, if they're trying to energetically take from me or physically take from me. Are they there? Can I feel that they fully just want to give and receive and it's not about them? And I think that there's something with this particular person. I think that what they're doing is being really present. They're not in a rush. They're not just going down on me so I do something for them. They're doing it because it feels really good for them, and I can like totally pick up on that. And there's just something there, and they're just present, right? They're just paying attention to what my body's doing, and then they follow that thread. They're not doing all the things that they heard that they should do. And it feels so good to be in this place of, and I say this to them, like, oh my God, I know this might sound like I'm trying to butter you up, but you're the first person. I'm just like, I could have you eat my pussy for hours. And so my long-winded story of, like April said, anything could change. This doesn't mean you have to break up with your partner of 3.5 years, but maybe there's more going on there that you need. Maybe it isn't skill. Maybe you need more safety, relaxation to feel more respected. Do you need to feel more like you don't have to do something or instantly give back or be something else? Or is there pressure to have an orgasm from them or from you?
Or maybe you just can't come right now with oral, and that's okay.
Everyone's nerve endings are so different. Like everyone thinks that we're all the same, but some people have more nerve endings internally, some more externally. I mean, the clitoris has the majority of the nerve endings, but everyone is really, really different. So don't be so hard on yourself to think that there's something wrong with you. And just because your girlfriends absolutely love it, you're different. You're different from them.
And it's not the easiest thing to orgasm from only oral. There's a lot of techniques that could be utilized with the oral. If the partners of previous oral episodes, haven't used enough fingers, fingers actually inserting fingers and using the pressure from your fingers as well can be really helpful.
Go listen to the episode that we did. It was how to eat pussy like a champ.
Yeah.
Or have your partner listen to that too. And, and lovingly say, this isn't because I think you're doing a terrible job. It's like, hey, obviously you like to go down on me, and I'm still learning what my body likes in this department. So maybe we can listen together and try some things.
I like that.
It's a good episode. How do you pussy like a champ?
So I'd say don't write it off. Keep revisiting, and I invite you to take a break and then maybe revisit it in another few months. Maybe you'll really like it.
And you could learn to like it. I sure did. All right. You ready for a bio? This podcast is fucking awesome, by the way.
Oh my God. She blew my mind, and that is... Like
She's
totally
so
blowed my blowed.
She blowed her mind.
I need to blowed my nose. She blew my mind in this. So you stay tuned. You're gonna love this.
She's incredible. So Dr. Jolene Brighten is a leading expert in post-birth control syndrome and hormonal birth control related problems, as well as women's health naturopathic medical doctor, practicing physician, and speaker. She is also the author of Healing Your Body Naturally After Childbirth, The New Mom's Guide to Navigating the Fourth Trimester, and her latest book, which we are obsessed with, Beyond the Pill. To learn more, visit Dr. That's Dr. Brighten, BRIGHTEN.com. But first,
This podcast is made possible by Your Super. Did you know that 9 out of 10 people don't eat enough fruits and veggies? When you don't get the proper nutrition, you increase your risk for chronic illnesses. And despite being pretty health conscious ourselves, it's still difficult to get all the whole foods our bodies require with our busy lives. That's one of the many reasons why we love Your Super. They make it easy for us to get the nutrients our bodies need to thrive. Your Super's superfood and plant protein mixes are made from organic, whole superfoods and nothing else.
I love knowing that the Super Green Mix is keeping my immune system healthy and strong, and it's also an easy way to get a serving of greens. I add it to my morning smoothies, on top of salads, to my morning oats, you all know I love oats, and anywhere in between. And don't even get me started about the chocolate lovers mix. And guess what? Our listeners get 15% off when you use code SHAMELESS at yoursuper.com. That's YOUR super.com with code SHAMELESS for 15% off. Go get your health on. And now back to the show. All right, everyone, episode time. Now, fun fact about this episode we actually recorded, I don't even know, a couple months ago. And April and I loved it. We were so excited about it. And we both read Jolene's books and we were just so excited. And then the external hard drive crashed and we lost it and we did not save it to the cloud, also known as myself. I did not do that. My fault. And we lost it. And so we are finally doing this again and we're really excited about this. We just couldn't let it go. We have to share this information with you. So Jolene, welcome back to the Shameless Sex Podcast.
I know. Can we get the rights to the Slim Shady song? Guess who's back?
Guess who's
back again.
Yeah. Jolene's back.
Well, I'm excited because I get to sing the Dolly Parton Jolene to you maybe at some point as a surprise again. Yeah. But although my voice is a little funky today, I'll give it my best.
Crazy is that my son, who is 6, has actually never heard that song. And I just never thought, I think he's heard the Ray LaMontage version, but I never thought anything of it. And it came up on a Spotify playlist just yesterday. And he was like, why does that woman keep saying your name, Mom? And I was like, oh, I got to spin a whole story. I was like, oh, when I met Dolly, she was like, that Jolene girl, let me write a song. And then about 10 minutes in, he's like, are you for real? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not at all. But
why are you trying to take her man, Mom?
I know. Well, that's the thing. We had that discussion before. Whenever people are like, did your parents name you after that song? I'm like, God, I hope not. Because if you listen to the lyrics, she is scandalous. That Jolene is scandalous. And poor Dolly.
Poor Dolly. Dolly's been married for, I think, 60 years to the same man.
Try again, Jolene.
Jolene did not succeed.
No.
So let's. We've already heard the answers, but maybe you have different answers now. But for our listeners, will you tell our listeners about yourself and how you got to be where you are today?
Sure. So I am a bit of a nerd and always have been. So I've always been really interested in the human body and oh man, I have to say there's some Instagram accounts I was just sharing with my team this week that I love to follow in their autopsy accounts. And my team is like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, this has always been something I've been fascinated in. So and the funny thing is that I actually never set out to be a doctor. I actually thought I was going to be a pharmacist for a minute there. But so for me, I was a sick kid, had a lot of digestive issues. It took a decade for them to figure out I actually had a infection in my stomach called H. pylori. So these medications now, these proton pump inhibitors and H2 blockers that we know are troublemakers and are actually being recalled, some of them from being over the counter. I was put on them at 17 when there was no studies done on women, let alone a 17-year-old gal. And I was told that this was it. I would be on this medication. This is how I was going to live the rest of my life. And I then started making observations about my diet, and that propelled me into nutrition because although my doctor said to me that diet had nothing to do with any of this, I was like, no, there's something to this. And so that's when I set out to study nutrition. And, in that I was like to my doctor, I'm never going to take a pill every day. Silly you, doctor. And then they were like, hey, but those really heavy, painful periods that you hate and how you don't want to have a baby? We have a pill for that. And I was like, sign me up. I'm down for that. So I started birth control. I swapped that out, started birth control. And I spent 10 years on the pill. I'm really grateful for it. It's great that we have options. And, because of that option, I'm a first generation college student. I was able to become a naturopathic physician. And I'm one of the first women in my family not to get pregnant in her 20s. So that's all winning. Thank you, birth control. But as you read in my book, I also had my, like so many of us, my pill story, my struggles of being on birth control. And it wasn't until I got to naturopathic medical school and I was in my first year, and I remember sitting there. I still remember. It's like that dun, dun, dun movie moment where, the professor says, women are only fertile one day out of the month. They ovulate one day, the egg lasts one day, and that's how we get women pregnant. And I was like, wait a minute. I've been suppressing my hormones every day for 10 years, thinking I could get pregnant at any point. I actually don't understand how my body works. And I had this epiphany that you shouldn't have to go to medical school to understand how your body works that you're living in, how your menstrual cycle works, and that no one had ever told me how birth control worked and what was going on with all of that in my body. So I come off of birth control. I end up with post-birth control syndrome, lose my period for the first time in my life, develop cystic acne. And I'm like, what is going on? My doctor's like, you probably have PCOS. You've always had it. I didn't. That's not what was going on. And because I was in medical school, I was like, no, I don't fit the diagnostic criteria for this. And it can't be that. But of course, I thought I was a freak, thought I was the only one. My doctor did a good job reinforcing that until I got into clinical practice and I saw how many women struggled to break up with birth control. And I got this reputation of being the doctor who believed women's birth control stories. Now, part of this is that, I'd done 2 years of clinical rotations in a homeless youth clinic, which is a lot of dispensing of birth control. So whenever people are like, oh, you're just, the easiest way to dismiss this inconvenient conversation that we have to have, because what I say is inconvenient. Like if you're just like, I just want to use this and not have to think about it, it's really inconvenient when I start sharing like, but this might go on and that might go on. You got to like do more work to take care of your body. But the fastest way to dismiss me is to say, well, she's anti-birth control. And it's something where, and I've had people that get mad at me because I'm not anti-birth control. And I have to explain that like when you spend 2 years working with women who live on the streets, who are disproportionately affected by the, taxes on tampons and, really like they don't have dignity when they menstruate because they have to choose food or a pad. And in addition, they're really high risk for sexual assault. They don't have a door that locks at night behind them. That birth control is amazing for these women in their situation. And it's something that I'm really grateful to have that experience because it has always really been embedded in me that I don't know what happens when that woman leaves my office. I don't know what her life is like. We don't share everything with our doctor. And there is no way that even as a doctor with what I know, that I could ever know enough to tell a woman how to live her life best. And that, she shouldn't use birth control or should. Like, yes, there are hard and fast of like, if you, like chapter 8 of my book, if you have these genetic mutations that mean you're at higher risk for a clot, we can't be using hormonal birth control with you. Like that's not safe. And we can have those conversations. But this idea that it's got to be all or nothing, I fully reject that. I'm like, I think we can advocate for access for better technology, better reproductive technology, while we also advocate for education and informed consent. So that's really my jam. Is I want women to understand, what goes on with birth control, how it works, but I also want them to understand that you can work with your body. Your symptoms are not your body's way of betraying you. Your symptoms are your body's way of talking to you, saying, hey, I need some help here. And there's opportunity. I, spent a decade celebrating how I just told my body what to do. And I waged war with it because those painful periods that they kept me out of school. I bled through my clothes. That sucks. Like bleeding through your clothes is like, no man really can ever, like, there's no level of empathy they can really relate to with that because until it's happened. And the thing is that when I came off of birth control, it's like, I felt like I had PTSD. I was like, wait, I was bleeding through my clothes, like as a teenager. And here I am now, in my late 20s, bleeding through my clothes again. Like it's, any woman listening that's ever had that experience knows. There's a time of the month we can't even wear white pants. Like, what is that about? So, of course, I was happy to be on birth control and be like, bye, bad periods. I don't want anything to do with you.
I completely am with you with the bad periods. I'm now 37, and I only just started implementing some of your suggestions from your book, which we'll talk about in a bit, into my life to help with my gnarly periods. I've been off birth control, I think now so I'm 37, I think I got off when I was 32. So it hasn't been an extreme amount of time to tell exactly what my body will do. I was on birth control for 15 years and different forms. I was on the pill, I was on the ring, I was on the IUD, and I had never had a gnarly period in all of those years. And I think because as a teenager, it didn't really kick in. I was an athlete, so my periods were really inconsistent. And then being on birth control, obviously, I didn't know what they would be like. They were light in like a couple of days and I never had cramps. Now
Isn't that amazing though?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I talked to people, I think even, and Amy will, I'm sure, talk about her experience, but some of my friends only have periods once a year, or they barely get them at all because of the types of birth control, which all sounds great. And you've named some of the few reasons when you talk about gnarly periods. I'm like, I would eat birth control to not have that anymore. But there's different ways, of course, to avoid getting these really horrendous periods every month, which we'll talk about as well. But what are some other reasons? Obviously, contraception is another great one. But what are some of the other reasons for taking birth control? And how can these items affect have negative side effects of the birth control? My question's very disorganized right now because my head's like, brr. I think you get what I'm throwing down.
I totally got you.
You're savvy.
And I mean, what you just said right there, though, contraception, birth control was designed for spacing pregnancies or delaying pregnancies. And I don't really think they ever designed it for a woman who never wanted to have a baby, because when birth control was stepping out, like, we were still supposed to be baby making machines, and that was our lot in life, thanks society. Now women do whatever they want. And if you are a woman who's like, but I never want a baby, I ain't here to judge you. Totally. Like, I will say I have one, and after having a child, I'm like, oh yeah, I know now. I know it's a lot of work. So here's the thing. That's how it was designed. It was never designed to be what it has evolved into now, which is the pill for every female ill, as I call it. So whether you have heavy periods, painful periods, it might be because of endometriosis. Maybe you have irregular periods. That could be due to PCOS, hypothyroidism, being an athlete. What was once called the female athlete triad, which is not an eating disorder. It's just you're not eating enough to keep up with the energy expenditure, which is like, of course, when you're a teenager, like the food is your only like rebellion and sense of control in many situations. And so people probably heard me say on other interviews, the crumb donuts story comes up a lot, where I just ate crumb donuts for lunch. And I'm like, I really need to design healthy crumb donuts, like a version of that, to be like, I've talked about it enough. So the other issues, though, that we see that bring women to start birth control is acne. So whether it's cystic acne, or like you just don't want to have a blemish for your senior prom pictures or wedding day. We also see other issues with like headaches or migraines that can be cyclical. And, certainly if you think about like if anything is related to lady part issues or is hormonal in any way, that is when women are often past the pill. And that is the leading lady to step on the scene. So it's the most widely used, but we also have IUDs, patch, ring, shots. I mean, it's great that we have options, but we also need to have the full story surrounding all of this. And when it comes to birth control, I think it's really important that women understand that we don't actually know what happens when we leave women on birth control for decades on end and they don't ever have a period. Now, you might say, well, but I'm bleeding. I'm bleeding once a month. Yes, you are having a medication-induced withdrawal bleed, but you're not actually having a period because you're not having the full cycle. A period only comes after ovulation, after a cascade and fluctuations of hormones. And science actually hasn't answered that question. When I started birth control, my doctor was clear that it had a 10-year life. Like I could do the pill for 10 years. And then after that, no, the risk got too high. And when 10 years came, my doctor was like, yeah, no, you can just stay on it. We leave women on it now. And I asked, what changed in the research? Well, not much has changed in the research. This is just our new recommendations. And that was really startling to me. And so with that, there was actually in Scientific American, just recently, I think it was after our first interview, that Dr. Kissling, who's a researcher, actually made a statement and said that, long-term menstrual suppression via birth control is the largest uncontrolled medical experiment ever conducted. And I think that was a moment, like, I'm like, okay, I've been out here saying this for like years, but when a researcher comes out and drops that, that's when like everybody's like, hold up, wait, what? And that's what we see a lot. We see a lot of clinicians who are like, birth control is a gift. Just take it and say thank you and don't question it. And if you have side effects, that's you. It's not your birth control. And this is not a generalization across the board, but those clinicians do exist. And, you know, I'm sure there's women right now who are nodding their head. I've had these clinicians who are like, no, those yeast infections, that's you. No, it was actually birth control. And in that, though, we see the researchers, the people who do the research are the ones who are saying, no, in fact, we don't actually have significant data on what we're saying. Like, we don't actually have, like, we did not answer the question, what happens when a gal starts her period? Maybe it's irregular. Maybe she's 14. You put her on birth control and then she goes to menopause and she never once ovulates. We don't know. And it's not, and this is what I'm saying. This is inconvenient, everybody. It's super inconvenient that I ask these questions, that I put this out there. And yet this is what we need to be demanding research to do, is to answer these questions for us so that we can understand.
One example, also the side effects being like stroke, heart attack, death. And you're like, what? I remember taking a pill and hearing the side effects. And then when they say that's you, however, how many people are actually having those side effects? They probably won't reveal that.
Well, this is the thing, is that, you know, we see that the stroke, pulmonary embolism, so that's when a clot, you know, so clots will usually form in the veins. They get dislodged. They can end up in the lungs. That's a pulmonary embolism. Estimates are that if you have a pulmonary embolism, it's 20 to 25% of people die from that. Clot can travel to your brain. You can end up with a stroke. And so when we look at these things, like the risk of, you know, stroke and clots, like, and all of this conversation is really looking at healthy young female population. So understand that, women who are listening, research is not saying you have a pre-existing condition of diabetes and polycystic ovarian syndrome and autoimmune disease or anything like that, and saying like, maybe, you know, maybe we should study you. Yes, there's been some research with like, what's the impact of birth control with like lupus, that's an autoimmune disease. We tend to clot more with coagulation issues with that. But it is something it's really startling. And so we'll often hear doctors will say, oh, the stroke, heart attack risk, it's so minimal, don't worry about it. Okay. Except we are talking about stroke and heart attack, and we can screen for that. Now, in chapter 8 of my book, I give a list of labs, one of which is factor V Leiden. When you hear these stories of my 19-year-old, took the pill and 3 months later was dead, they likely had a factor V mutation. Now, this is something that I really get. You guys saw me. No one else can see me. I'm all flushed and I took off my sweater. Like I'm sweating talking about this because I get really upset at how often the parents who tell these stories are dismissed and it's swept under the rug. And it's like, don't talk about this. And the whole current and vibe is that if we talk about the side effects, no woman would ever take birth control. And then she's just so silly she would get pregnant, or she can't understand her body. And, you know, I have lots of patients that I review the side effects with. We screen for labs and they still choose to use birth control. And then I support them and we track that. Like, I don't think it has to be that way, but I've seen, you know, people say, in response to me saying we should really screen these things. In Canada, an MTHFR mutation, which is an enzyme that helps you process your folate, it's involved in folate and B12 metabolism. It's about 40% of the population has this mutation. And in Canada, so interesting. I was on a medical database and it was like, here's the list, everything you want to know about this contraceptive, this pill specifically. And here's the contraindications, everything for the US. And by the way, Canada also says MTHFR should be looked at. And if you have an elevated homocysteine, and I'm like, yeah. So, but that's a thing that I wrote about in my book. I have US physicians telling me that's not a thing, but in Canada, like what, it's the same pill. Like what is happening here? And so we can screen for these things. Yes, people say we shouldn't screen for it. It's frivolous lab testing. But I think if you said that to somebody who's lost their child to birth control and they could have screened for it and it could have been prevented, they would have given any amount of money to run this test. And a lot of times this test is like a couple $100s. And this is something that when I have conversed with parents, I mean, I get lots of parents reaching out to me being like, thank you so much for the work you're doing. My daughter actually died. It was dismissed. I've been trying to advocate. I've talked with parents who are starting foundations around this, and they're like, why can't we just screen this simple test? And, you know, I get hit with a lot of haters, as I'm sure you guys do too. And I have to we don't get up in the morning to serve those people. And I think I hold on to like these stories and these, like what women have said to me. And recently there was a woman who, she actually put this in an Amazon review, who had written me, and she had a clot and was on birth control. And because of reading my book, she advocated for herself after being dismissed and sent home and told there was nothing wrong. And because she advocated for herself, she's like, I saved my own life just by having access to the information that my doctor had never told me that actually existed in this book. And that is why I get up every day, because women deserve to have all the information. They are not stupid. They are very smart, and they just need to have the information and view it through the lens of what is true for me and get that individualized approach from their doctor. Mm-hmm. So we launched into the big scary things. There's lots of other things that birth control does. That's not big and scary.
You said a lot of the good. There's a lot of good things too, and then there's big and scary things. And one thing that came to mind for me, and this is not a hormonal birth control method, but I was on the non-hormonal IUD, the Paragard, and the first round, I got pregnant on it, so it stopped working at year 9. But I didn't stop. You know, it's not completely, it's not abstinence. So, but I got a second one after getting that first one removed, and all of a sudden, my face broke out like crazy, but it was almost like a rash. I was extra puffy and bloated. But any Western doctor was like, "It's not the IUD. You know, it's you." So, so I'm bringing this to not even just hormonal birth control methods, but things that are run by pharmaceutical companies who are, you know, probably funding a lot of the research, and you know a lot more about this. And so, and then the doctors are the ones that only know that research. And so so I have experienced that on my own. I looked online, thousands of women experiencing the same thing. Their hair was falling out from the copper and the IUD, but no Western doctor that I spoke to would advocate for that. They're like, no, it's not the IUD. We don't see that. Instead, it's like, all right, but look at these women. You know, look what these people are saying.
It's like copper poisoning almost, right? Slowly.
That's what they were saying, that it was, you know, copper poisoning or some sort of reaction to the copper, or, you know, and it causes inflammation in your uterus, and that's kind of how it works in the first place. So, but just bringing that kind of around to a lot of what we know is biased information. And so there's people like such as yourself who is kind of on the ground working with people and actually getting real, experiential, real human perspectives on what's actually going on, and that there's so much value in that. And so I'm just happy you're giving voices to the
Well, and I'm glad that you bring up your story. I mean, this is why we all have to share our stories. And this is like, I mean, when I was like, come off birth control, I have post-birth control syndrome. My doctor is like, yeah, no, you probably had these issues all along and you didn't know it. I'm like, no, I don't. No, that's not true. This is gaslighting. Like this is essentially gaslighting. And when you get on online forums, you see thousands of women telling the same story across different continents, never have talked to each other. The eerie thing is how often they use the same language. How many times I've had patients in my office, they've never talked to each other. They're not in online forums. They're using the same descriptive language for what's going on. I mean, this is something where I'm like, we don't need a study to believe a woman's truth, because the reality is that there are always outliers. There are always people who do not respond as predicted. And so the best advice that I give women is for any medical procedure, whether it's birth control or anything else, is to document your symptoms, write it down. What is normal for you? Because then when things change and someone says to you, no, you're just misremembering, or no, that's you, that's not this. You can be like, nope, it was X, Y, and Z. On this date, I had this intervention. Now this is what it looks like. And it's inconvenient to have to document all this stuff and keep track of it, but you kind of have to be your own little mad scientist in a way with your body of I need to write all of this down, and we have to take this with us to the doctor. I have totally been in doctor's visits where, I mean, I went in, was like, this is my objective, and here's what's going on. And then by the time I left, I was walking out with other prescriptions, didn't even know. I was like, what just happened in there? What is going on? And that was most of my 20s. It was what just happened in this doctor's office? I don't even know. This thing, this is what I'm being told now. And with the, with the copper IUD, what's really interesting is that medicine has had a very convoluted history with the female body. They were like scared of it. Don't dissect it. Let's shame it. Let's like, do you guys ever listen to Joe Rogan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where he had that stand-up comedy little bit where he was like, a tampon was obviously invented by a man. Like, he's like, oh yeah, just be like, let's just like everything else is like, let's let it flow. And then a tampon's like, shove something up there and just stop it.
Like, shove a cotton dick in your vagina. I was like, yeah, that's pretty much what it's like.
Oh, that's right. Oh, somebody's going to listen to this and be like, she went there.
I mean, I saw that stand-up and I was like dying during it because he's like, no way that a woman would invent that. I was like, you're totally right, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I had to record it and put it on Instagram. I've watched that several times. It was hilarious. But you know, the uterus has been. I mean, once upon a time, we were hysterical and our uterus wandered our body, and we were asexual creatures. Oh, lo and behold, our clitoris is giant. Like it turns out, it's not this little button. And even now, it's. I mean, I meet with women all the time that they're like, I'm having these problems. And my doctor said, well, you're not going to have a baby. You're done having babies. Just cut it out. You don't need your uterus. It's like, why is the female reproductive system always negotiable, but like Viagra is available like widespread because heaven forbid, like men's reproductive system not be working. Like this is something that like, and you know, before anybody eye rolls and is like, are we going on a feminist patriarchy rant? No. But this is the facts. And like, we have to examine that because even now we've, just last year had a rodent study come out showing that rodents could navigate a maze until you took out their uterus. And once you took out their uterus, they were like, I can't get through this maze. Like, what is going on?
Oh my God.
And so now we're starting to investigate the uterine brain connection, which why are we so like throttling and cautious about all this? Because this is the kind of thing that if we show that like, okay, if you lose your uterus, you might have cognitive deficit, then it potentially holds us back because society has spun this story that we are the lesser in some way. And that is just inaccurate. We're actually meant, I mean, the world would be a better place if men and women were equal playing fields, like since like day one of humanity, which, you know, they were, and then we got a little lost in that because we complement each other so well. It's not that anybody's the lesser or weaker. We actually have to work together. That's how we're designed.
Oh my God, Jolene, you're just like my spirit animal. I just love you. So let's talk about kind of a juicy topic, which is sex drive, libido. And I know, speaking from my own experience, I feel like as soon as I got off birth control, the pills specifically, I felt like a light switch had turned on, and I've always been more sexual in nature. I distinctly remember though being on the pill and being like, is this thing on? Like I can't feel anything. Like I wouldn't be ever turned on. It would take forever. And at the time I never blamed the birth control. I blamed a lot of other things. And so I would love to listen to kind of the correlation between sex drive, libido, and the pill per se from your words.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that I love that you're like, let's get into this juicy conversation because birth control makes all the juices stop flowing.
Right.
So, I mean, vaginal dryness is really common. I actually just published an article at drbrighten.com on 14 plus reasons why you have pain with sex. And how many women wrote me and they're like, thank you for saying in the article that it's normal to need lubrication. I'm like, yeah, nothing is like what Hollywood presents us. There's all this talk about like, you know, men see porn and then they have this like distorted view of sexuality. But what is showing all day on the televisions and in the movies is that women, a man just looks at you and then like, oh, they're like, you're just totally in the mood and you had an orgasm 10 minutes late. That is not how female anatomy or the body works. And so understand that we all need lube, especially certain times in our cycle. There's no shame in that, but definitely check your lube because you don't want to be introducing endocrine disruptors. So like in my practice, like if we're doing a gyne exam, we don't even have, like we have I like to say cleanest lube possible, but at the same time, I don't want anyone to feel like that's a stigmatizing thing about the cleanliness of your vagina. That's not what we're talking about here. I just mean like how pure can we get it? Like, you know, spit, coconut oil, like, you know, those kinds of things that people use. It's better than like things that are introducing chemicals into.
I bring Uber Lube to my gyno appointments, by the way. I literally do because I don't like what they use. And
totally.
I recommend people doing that. I love Uber Lube. too.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we love them, but do you bring your own to your own gynos? You don't have to answer them.
Well, my gynecologist, my PCP who does my gyne exams, she actually was the student who worked under me while I was in clinic. So I spent 2 years basically with her one-on-one training her. So I was like, who am I going to trust with my vagina? The person that I know super well. And so no, her stuff is all on point with that as well. And that's what you usually find if your naturopathic physician is doing your gyne exam, is that we're very, very aware of what lubricants we're using, because this is a mucous membrane. And if you think about when we deliver bioidentical hormones, we'll often do this in a topical form. And that's something that like is well absorbed. So you have to consider with environmental toxins. Plus, like, you know, some of us don't want to give up like our hair product or our nail polish and things like that. So if you don't want to give that up, then switch the lube. And there's like so many more products out there and they actually work a lot better. I'll just say that if you're on the pill and you have issues with yeast infections, it's something that's like glycerin, like the sugary stuff base, not a good idea. And then of course, depending on the kind of condom you use, we all want to be using condoms unless we are STI screening, monogamous kind of relationship, then you're going to want to evaluate your lube as well. So with birth control, vaginal dryness, yes. We also see that there can be loss of libido. I always joke, that's the sneaky way it worked. Like I went through my 20s, like my orgasms were so pitiful. They're like, a lot of women tell me their 30-something-year-old orgasms are much better. But, you know, people are like, oh, you figure out your body. I'm like, or we came off birth control. It could be that. But so we can have an inability to orgasm. We can also have pain with orgasm. The loss of libido really comes down to the fact that when you're on birth control, it will downregulate the production of testosterone and upregulate the production of sex hormone binding globulin. This is a protein that your liver makes, not because your body hates you, but because it's trying to protect you. So when you take birth control, the pill specifically, there's actually a genetic alteration that occurs that causes you to increase that protein because you're taking a high enough dose of hormones that your liver takes a crack at detoxing it, but it's still enough to shut down brain-ovarian communication. And if all of those hormones were left to float around, they could be some major troublemakers for you. So your body, being really wise, is like, let's make sex hormone binding globulin, grab onto that. So that will drop your libido. And then in addition to that, you know, for some women, they come off, sex is better. For some women, they come off, the libido doesn't come back because the sex hormone binding globulin stays elevated. Interestingly, if you meet your partner on birth control and you're on birth control and you're with this partner, when you come off of birth control, you're more likely to report sexual dissatisfaction. And when you start looking at all the research studies together, what's interesting is that as women, we tend to choose men. Okay, this is going to be kind of funny, but we tend to choose men based on their money and their intelligence while we're on birth control. So why is that? I'm like, somebody's going to be like, oh, see, those women are scandalous. No.
I dated a broke musician on birth control, so I didn't get that memo.
Yeah. You're like, that's because you were like, I'm going to make my own money.
Yeah, it was...
But with that, I mean, what is that? That's the modern day age of selecting for a partner who can protect you and take care of you. But as you come off of birth control, now the way they look, that goes up in priority. Now you're like, you better be hot and you better be good in bed. And so women on birth control are more likely to initiate divorce. And then when they come off, they're more likely to get divorced. So
you did that.
I totally did that.
I did that.
Shit, you're blowing my mind right now.
I'm like putting my hand up. I'm like,
oh my God. It literally happened like a year after.
Yeah.
Wow. My mind is blown and that doesn't happen that often. Holy shit.
I met, you know, the first guy I married, the first time I met him, I was not attracted to him. And I actually, when I got into this research, because he had more feminine features, that's not why, I mean, I don't know. I just wasn't attracted to him. Who can explain the cocktail of attraction when you're a teen, you know? But then I got on birth control and we like met up months later. And then suddenly I was like, oh yeah, I could be into him. Yeah. And then I came off of birth control and I was like, WTF, what was I doing? And when I look back, I'm like, wow, yeah, his jaw structure was much more narrow. And, you know, there were these differences where when I look at the research and when they have women on birth control manipulating faces and everything we know about attraction, birth control disrupts your MHC, your perception of the MHC complex, which is what's in pheromones that tells us, yeah, I want to get with him. Because even if you don't want a baby, your body's like, I want a baby. That's what I'm here for. And you're selecting for dissimilar genes. So something's going to give baby more variety. But when we're on birth control, this is the section of my book. This is your bad boyfriend part of birth control. Where, I'm not saying birth control is why you chose the bad boyfriend, but if you want to say that, you can say that. But with that, when you're on birth control, you actually are selecting for men that are more genetically like your cousin, and that's gross and weird. And so every time I say it, I'm like, I can never get over how weird that is. But also, I'm not judging anybody because I've been there. But it is something that we're now starting to see a lot of researchers question. Well, what impact has this had on society as a whole? And Dr. Sarah Hill, who just came out with a book called This Is Your Brain on Birth Control, her and I were in a conversation, and she's talking about for rentals, apartment rentals, birth control keeps people single longer. So for the economy, it might be better for that. There's all of these ways that birth control can be impacting things really positively, but we also have to be asking and what kind of negative impact has it had? And in all this research, if you're a woman listening to this now, this is just research. This doesn't mean this is your life or this is the way things are going to play out. But if you do break up with birth control and then find you're not attracted to your mate anymore and something's going on, you don't have to shame yourself and feel like you're broken. That's what we do so well as women. But you can have some curiosity around that. And I think if you know this, and you know this is what's going on, because you are this very intellectual being in itself, this is just something where you can be hey, I can intervene sooner than later. We can go to counseling, we can go to sex therapy, we can do these things and recognize what's going on. Because when you don't know and you just think you're the broken one and something's wrong, or you just fell out of love, and it's a very hard struggle, I think. And to have a way to understand, in a lot of ways, I'm why did I marry that guy? Well, there's a lot of reasons that went into that. But looking at your brain chemistry was also altered as well. And so, okay, we don't have to be oh, girl, you were so stupid. It's okay, it was a multifactorial event, and we all did really dumb things at some point in our life, and we can forgive ourselves for that. Now, I do want to say, one thing that's really interesting about birth control that we should know in terms of the sex arena. One, definitely increased risk of yeast infections. So that can be problematic for your sex life. But research has also shown that if you begin birth control, the pill specifically, before age 16, you're about 9 times more likely to develop vulvodynia. And vulvodynia is a chronic pain issue. So it's, and it affects the outer genitalia. So it wouldn't be what we call deep dyspareunia, which is deep penetration, which, by the way, for women to understand, sometimes that's a positional thing. That it isn't like Hollywood makes it out to be. But if you're having pain at the opening with insertion or even with touch, this is something worth exploring, and to understand that statistically speaking, women's pain is dismissed at a higher rate than men. We're more likely to be told it's in our head and be sent home. And that's why you need to work with a pain expert. So if you are having pain with sex, pain with orgasm, chronic pelvic pain, work with a doc who specializes in pain. They'll be way more on top of the research, but the research is really lacking in women's sexual health altogether, but especially with, pain that is associated with intercourse or pain in the pelvis. And if you work with someone experienced, they'll be able to draw from their experience, and you'll be more likely to get help with that. And so I don't want any woman to lose hope. There are so many avenues. And, in the United States, it takes 5+ docs for women to get the help they need. So if you feel like you're on doctor number 3 and you're hitting your head against the wall, keep going. You're worth it. You're totally worth it.
That's such great advice because doctors, and you're a doctor, they're not God or goddesses, right? They don't know everything. So questioning is okay. Asking questions, doing your own research, and getting multiple opinions about something. I think that's great advice that everyone
They're-
can really take.
Yeah. And they're experts on the human body, but they're not experts on your body. And that's the thing, is that you have to partner with someone who respects that you may be a deviation from the study. You may be a deviation from the algorithm. You may be in the gray when they were taught the world is black and white.
Yeah. I love your book, Beyond the Pill. I loved it. It was so easy to navigate. It wasn't like reading cover to cover where you need to study each piece. You make it really simple. And I would love if you can give our listeners a quick rundown of what people can expect from the 30-day program and a little insight to what that looks like.
Yeah, it's really a get in and get out kind of book, because when you have hormone imbalance, you don't have time to read 300 pages. And so that's why it was really funny as we were going through edits. They're like, maybe put the quiz a little bit further back so that women are drawn in. I'm like, put the quiz in chapter 1. They take it, they go right to the section they need. They feel better. They come back a month later. They do a little bit more. And so there have been women, it's designed both ways, which was really tricky and fun. But I was like, I said to my editor, I'm like, look, if a woman has estrogen dominance, her PMS is off the chain, and you tell her, hey, you got to read 200 pages of problems until you get to the solution, she's going to rip the book in half and curse my name. It's not going to be a good scene. So in that, you really get in, you can take the quiz and you can go right into, here's the, diet, lifestyle, and supplement protocols that can help. And if you are someone who wants to read it front to back, you can totally do that as well. But if you are really struggling with hormone imbalance, I definitely recommend, you don't even have to read the first chapter. Shh, don't tell anyone I said that. Just get in and take the quiz in chapter 1. I designed the book to be with you for life. It is something that, I want this to be, how many of us have health books? I have a lot, where I've read it once and I'm like, all right, I'm good. I really want this to be like, oh, wait, I've been good. 2 years later, maybe I'm not. I need to troubleshoot. I'm going to go back and I'm going to just troubleshoot. So within the book, you're going to learn, it is the first book to really detail women's health, hormones, how to go a different way other than birth control, how birth control fits into your life and how to stay safe while you're on it, how to navigate that conversation with your doctor, and then what happens when you come off of birth control. It's truly the book that I wish that I was given when I started my period. It would have cleared up so much confusion in my life. And how many times all of us are like, I can't talk about this. I'm really ashamed and I must be the only one. When in reality, most of us are experiencing a lot of these issues. So I go through the book. There's information. There's a whole chapter on post-birth control syndrome, how to avoid it, how to come off of birth control. There's the period decoder chapter is what I call it. So if you've got heavy periods, you have painful periods, you have irregular periods, what might that mean? What should you ask your doctor to investigate? What labs should you be asking for? And what can you do right now to, start moving the needle towards health while you wait for that appointment or wait for labs, which is what you're doing right now. You're waiting for labs, but you're like, I'm still going to be taking care of my diet, taking care of my lifestyle. Because the reality is that the things that keep you out of the doctor's office are not the things that happen in the doctor's office. They are the things that you do every single day, what you put at the end of your fork, how you talk to yourself, how you move your body, how you sleep, who you follow on social media, and who you keep in your inner circle. All of these things are determinants of health, and they are incredible in hormonal health especially. And I think that they just don't get enough play. And we think that, we've got to take a pill, there's got to be a surgery or a major medical intervention. Let's be grateful we have those, but we also can take some personal responsibility. And so I provide you the tools to do that. My background is as a nutritional biochemist. So we always start with food is first when we're talking about nutrients. Then I talk to you about supplements. I have charts in there that list multiple brands of supplements. Mine is one of them, but I invite anybody. You can't get these all over the world. So I always invite women. You know what? We set up the website so you can read the label on mobile, and you can go in to a health food store and just look at the label on mobile and try to batch it. And in the United States, there's some of these natural health food stores where they actually have pharmacists who are trained in this kind of medicine. Same with France, and understand herbal medicine and understand nutritional therapy, and they can help you. And they'll actually, I have had pharmacists who actually message our customer service and is like, can you send us X, Y, and Z because we have someone here right now. We'd love to see these labels. And we're like, yeah, all we care about at the end of the day is that you get what you need and you support your body and you feel amazing, because it has always been my belief that if we can heal one woman, she can heal an entire community, if not the world. And there are too many of us. I, for one, spent a good amount of time being distracted by my hormones, my period problems, worrying about them, dreading them, wondering if I'm normal. What if we could free up all that mental energy? Oh, dang. I think this world would be a lot better off. And so that's really, I mean, the book is so much about building your user manual to your body. You will learn about your adrenals, your thyroid, your liver, your gut. By the way, you need all those things as you enter into menopause. So even while your cycle is gone, this can help you as well. And when you get into the 30-day plan, I don't do dogma. It's not my jam. And I don't do this like that food's bad kind of thing. No, like what works for you is all we care about. And that's what I want to help you evaluate. So we will eliminate some foods and then you'll test them. I want you to always ask what is true for me. You'll test like, how do these self-care practices work for me? These stress reduction practices. I give a big old list. I'm like, pick one, try it. Like it's not all going to work for everybody. And so you're going to really put together your basically day-to-day life of like, this is how I have optimized my health and how I live by. And then there will be resources to troubleshoot as things come up so that you can course correct. Because like, food poisoning happens. And what most people don't connect is that you can get food poisoning. You can develop small intestinal bacterial overgrowth as a result of it. And now we have a hormone imbalance. And so now we've got period problems and acne and our gallbladder struggling. And it's all coming down to what's in the gut.
Acne is the worst.
It is the worst.
I've encountered more acne in the last 2 years than I ever have in my entire even adolescence to early adult life. So it's frustrating. I will say that since taking some of the recommendations from your book, I have seen an improvement. Obviously, it's still too early to tell. But the cystic, painful acne, it's such a bummer. It's just, it's like a self-esteem killer too. So I will say that I have seen an improvement. So thank you for that. And will you tell our listeners, or did you want to ask something? Okay. Wasn't sure if Amy had something to add. Where people can find your book? I'm sure it's at Amazon, but is it anywhere else? And are you going to have an Audible version coming out? Probably hard to do with the quiz, but.
Well, there is an Audible version.
Oh.
And it's already out. And for everybody listening, you can get the audio anywhere, but wherever they sell audio, but you have to get the PDF downloads from there. I get more DMs, emails, even negative Amazon reviews because people are like, I can't find the PDF downloads and this author didn't give it to me. I'm like, they didn't give it to me. I don't have it. So you can get the audio version. And then you can get the book wherever they're sold. Definitely follow me on Instagram at Dr. Jolene Brighten, because whenever I'm traveling in cities, I always pop into the bookstore and just sign a bunch of them. And so there's none floating right now, but there will be more to come. And when you do, go to beyondthepillbook.com. I've got a bunch of gratitude bonuses there for you and resources to really help you along the journey. There's only so much you can put in the book. I mean, the book, it was 100,000 words when I turned it in, and they cut 30,000 plus out of it. But I'm like, we need more. And so we recorded videos. We did all kinds of extra things to really support women, on that journey. And then you can also go to drbrighten.com. Odds are, if you've got a lady part question, you've got questions about hormones at all, I've answered it there. So we've got tons of videos and resources. I've been chuckling lately. Women are calling it the Google of women's health. They're like, I Googled something. It's kind of hard to find. I go to your website and I'm like, there it is. That's exactly what I wanted to know. And we always try to take the position of like, what's it going to look like to talk to your doctor? What are the conventional options? And then what are also the natural options so that you have options?
I love that. You are such a inspiration and just such an important human. I'm so happy that you're doing this work, and it's so great. I hope our listeners all go and get the book if they're having any adverse symptoms to birth control or hormones or I don't know. I found so much like a complete restoration of my body after reading your book. And I think it's really important for anyone at any age, really. If you know, 16 to 95, you can probably still find benefits. So thank you, Jolene. Thank you. for take round 2 of having you on our podcast.
We knew this one would be the best one yet.
Yeah, we would just pre-gamed before, right?
That's
We just
practice.
it was a warm-up.
There was still new information because you're so full. You are a walking encyclopedia of information and you deliver it brilliantly. So thank you. And I hope to see you again soon and maybe have you back for the wealth of the 30,000 words that didn't get into the book. We can.
I know. We
touch on
could have
that.
talked so much longer, I think.
Oh, we could have in 2 hours easily.
Yeah. No, I actually did block off 2 hours just in case.
Oh, well, maybe we'll have a round 2. Yeah, I would love to because you're just so brilliant. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brighten.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And thanks again, even though it failed the first time, for everybody listening, I just want to shout you guys out because you sent an email and you're like, we're so embarrassed. We're so sorry this happened. Yet it happened and we would like to just try again. It's happened to other people. And then I just never hear anything. And I'm like, and then I reach out and I'm like, what happened? And they're like, I was too embarrassed. The whole thing crashed. I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I've learned in life? You can't control a lot of things and technology is definitely not one you can control. So I appreciate you reaching back out and that we got a second opportunity to do this.
And now we save it to our external hard drive and to the Dropbox online. So we have this covered, everyone. We're not going to lose this one.
No, this one's
Knock on wood.
going live very soon. Yes. Well, thank you. And we'll talk to you again very soon. I'm sure of it. Thanks to all of our listeners out there for tuning in to Shameless Sex and being part of the Shameless Sex revolution. We absolutely love you all. Ciao for now.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.